Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Isle of Man in the UK. This is John and Mike's MMA Corner.
Right, Luke, you are joining me right now to have a little chin wag before you go off to Spain, where it's going to be scorcho, I imagine, the weather, compared to the UK. So, let's not talk about the future, let's not talk about the past, let's talk about right now. Luke, what is it you're up to right now? Because you've went off to Spain, but let people at home know a little bit more about why you've went to Spain.
Well, pretty basic, like you said, it's the sun. Basically, I'm in Liverpool right now. I'm actually in a Starbucks in Liverpool town centre. But I got married about 5 months ago, and obviously been trotting around the world with my missus, with the fight game, with the UFC, California, and all over the place. We lived in California pretty much on and off for the last year and a half, 2 years. And then coming back to England, my mum, she left and moved to Spain, so I didn't have like a family home to go to. So we ended up coming up to Liverpool, where my wife's family's from. We're living with them on and off. So we decided we wanted to do our own thing and obviously get our own place. And when we decided to get our own place, we decided to move to Spain rather than stay in Liverpool, because neither of us had really been there for a while and wanted to be there. So we decided to go to Spain.
It's not bad. So but you're not just living there, are you? Because you've got the gym and everything going on there as well, haven't you? You've kind of upped the game, the level of MMA up in Spain.
Well, obviously, I've had 6 fights with the UFC, and I'm a big name when it comes to coaching and all the rest of it, especially for Spain out there, because they don't have a huge level. So when I decided to move to the Costa del Sol, I contacted a lot of places, a lot of gyms, offering my services as a coach to see what I wanted to do, and I think developing the talent they've got out there. They have a lot of talent. They're very, very passionate out there when it comes to fighting. They like jiu-jitsu and K1. There's a lot of K1 and Thai boxing, but their MMA game isn't very strong, really. They don't really have any MMA, but that's due to not having much coaching out there. So, my idea was, when I went out there, I wanted to try and start my own team and start my own thing, and we're in the beginning of that. It's the beginning process. I've only been there, a few months. I'm trying to get my feet on the ground and find the right place and the right people to put a good, strong team together. And we seem to have started that. So, it's a new path for me with the coaching, but I'm still really focusing on myself, and I'm really trying to build a team around me. So although I'm coaching, I'm trying to look for talent, bringing in talent from different parts of the Costa del Sol in Spain, and try and create a gym out there where everyone's there to help each other and move me forward.
I think the good thing about that, going into that coaching aspect, is that you've got not just experience from training at one gym. It's not like you were training, for example, at BKK, and you've only got one set of eyes. You've only got one coach training you, so you only know kind of one way. You've like you say, you've darted around. You went over to Alliance, if I recall. You were training there. You've been around. You obviously did tough, so you've had the experience of coaches helping you out on that. So I imagine you've got quite well-rounded kind of idea of how you like to approach coach and how you like to adapt yourself to specific skill sets to people. And found that?
I mean, that's one of the things about me when it comes to fighting, is I like to think about it, and it's something that, like you said, I went to Alliance. I was there for a little while. That's why we were in California. But I also did a 7 month stint with Chael Sonnen and his coaches over after the Ultimate Fighter, as well as doing the Ultimate Fighter, as well as starting at the Tsunami Gym in Cambridge, and then, like you said, BKK, and also I'm part of Shooters, so I've trained with a lot of Shooters gyms who go over to Gladius in Sweden, in Gothenburg. So yeah, I've been fortunate to have a lot of good coaching opportunities in my career so far. I mean, my career is still a young career. I mean, I've been a lot of places and trained and met a lot of people, but really, I haven't been doing it that long. So I've had, from the start, from the get-go, I've had great teams around me, great coaches, great people that have really taught me the right way. And that's where my advantages come in. And I've always been that guy who has analysed fights and looked at fights and thought, I would do it this way, or I would do this, or come up with game plans for people. And Chael noticed that on The Ultimate Fighter, and they used to ask my advice when it came to matchmaking and fights and all the rest of it. Helwani on his show, talking about the UFC and analysing the fights afterwards and before. And it's just, I have one of those minds that enjoys that and likes to do it. So, you know, it leads on to coaching. It's something that I want to do eventually, and I'm just trying to set up the basis of it right now in Spain to you know, to build the level there, to build my training there, and just, you know, for fun, really, for something to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I remember I've watched it a few times on television doing bits and listened to like your interviews bits. I remember you saying a while back you would break down every middleweight in the UFC. When you were in the UFC and you were in that division, you literally sat there and went, I break down every guy. I break him down, and I basically just work on each guy and what their skill sets are. I remember reading about that and how you do like to analyse things. And when I heard that, I kind of went, you've got an old head on a young body, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression that, you know, when I joined the middleweight division in the UFC, I was very early on, and I wanted to know everything about everyone that I could possibly find something out about. So I was always glued to my phone or the internet and researching fighters, and that didn't just include the people that were in the UFC. You look at the rankings and who's probably going to come into the UFC next, and that sort of level, and who's the top guys in Europe, and all that sort of stuff. So I was aware. So when they said to me that you'd be fighting this guy, or you could possibly fight this guy, I knew something about him, and I knew already that I didn't have to like all of a sudden think, oh, you know, it's time to game plan or work this out. I could see the trends and the styles and the fighters that were coming out, and who was being victorious, and how people were being successful and how they won, and I could sort of game plan for that. And, you know, if you have a last minute change, which I never actually had with my opponents, but if you had a last minute change, then you didn't have to worry so much because you knew about them. You know, and it's a lot harder now for me. Now I'm outside the UFC, and I'm the spectrum to fight people is much wider. I could fight anyone really on the planet, and you don't really have, it's impossible to know all of the people, and usually there's not enough content on the people that I'm fighting now to really find it. But, you know, I think that's definitely something I like to do and I'm good at, and it's helped me in my career, and one of the reasons I got up there so quickly.
I was going to say, let's go back to the UFC. I suppose like the Ultimate Fighter. You went into the Ultimate Fighter. From there on, you went into the UFC, and you had a really good start. You know, you had a fantastic start, and then, in my opinion, you know, due to poor education from judges, I feel like you got stung and done out of decisions in your last few bouts. And obviously, there's no point in bringing up the past because you can't change it. But, you know, little things like that really gripe me, because I remember it was in Berlin when you had the fight. Was it Strickland? Here we go, I'm trying to.
Yeah, Sean Strickland in Berlin.
Yeah, and I still to this day am absolutely. Now I know you might feel a bit aggrieved by it, but I am bewildered about how on earth that decision went to him. It really did stagger me. And little moments like that, you know, obviously it cost you, ended up your contract, but it's not like you were going in and you got smashed. You know, you lost a couple of silly, poor decisions. But when you left the UFC, you obviously had to have a bit of time to yourself and go, what's going to happen? And then you went and had a fight. Your first bout outside the UFC, it was in Italy. Now, for people at home, Italy isn't really known for MMA, but they've got one promotion. It's starting to really make a name for itself within Europe anyway. And yourself and Jack Mason went down there. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the gap between the UFC release and coming up to that title fight?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Like you said, I had a 3-fight start in the UFC, 3 wins, some impressive wins. I got one Fight of the Night award, or whatever they call it, accolade against Andrew Craig in Manchester. I went on to then finish Matt Nielsen in the first round by knockout, and I thought I deserved the Fight of the Night or a knockout of the night that night, but they decided to give 2 to Alexander Gustafsson for beating Jimmy Manuwa. So I was, you know, I had a great start, and then the Sean Strickland thing happened in Germany, and everyone feels the same. I mean, it wasn't my greatest performance in the world, but he was quite an awkward guy to fight, and you can't always finish a guy in the first round by a knockout, so you have to be able to rely on the judges sometimes. But in my case, I definitely can't rely on judges. And touching on that, they've actually used my fight against Sean Strickland, and they now do some courses for judging. So they do they teach people how to judge better, and they use that fight as an example for people to judge it when they do the courses. The UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation had started doing these courses to improve the judging in Europe, and they use my fight as an example to people to let them know how to judge and how not to judge and what to look for. So, I mean, that's the only positive I can think that came out of that situation. And then I went on to lose in Texas, which was another not great performance, but I still feel I won 2 rounds out of the 3. And I lost that fight. And then Mark Muñoz's fight, I definitely lost. Mark beat me, and it was a very, very hard fight for me. And that was a fight I really learned a lot from. And I feel like I've improved a lot since then. But then going on to Italy, like you said, when I left the UFC, it really was a question of what now? Like, what am I going to do now? Who am I going to fight? Where am I going to fight? And I contacted every single company you can think of, everyone you can name, and probably people you haven't even heard of. I contacted them all just to get everything, all the offers on the table, and work out what I wanted to do. And then, like you said, Jack Mason, who's a good friend of mine, had fought for Venator, and he'd mentioned the company to me. And then my friend Luca Santorio, who I would train with at Tsunami Gym, who's an Italian, he also mentioned it to me as well, about that they were doing good things and all the rest of it. And my only concern from that point on, making the right decision, was getting a good fight against a good opponent in a good organisation that followed the rules and wanted to build mixed martial arts. They weren't looking to do it for, I didn't want someone to come along and try and use me and use my name and use the things that I've done just for them to try and make money. That was my thing. I wanted to find someone who was passionate about the sport and wanted to make a difference to European MMA, and that's what I feel Venator do. They're putting on great shows. They're really, really putting a lot of effort into the shows. They're streaming them for people to watch them. They're bringing in talent from all over Europe. It's not just about Italy, although there's a lot of Italians on there. On the last card, we had Carla Musu, we had, like you said, Jack Mason, I was on the card, and now they're planning a massive card coming up for the next one, where they're going to have another host of talent from all over the world. So, I felt like it was a great move for me, and I fought for the title, and I had a tough fight, and I won that fight, and I showed, I think, in that fight that I have that will to win, and people should expect me to continue winning, and I'm really in it for the real deal and to get back to the UFC. I'm not just fighting for fight's sake, which a lot of people do after they leave the UFC. It's still a real passion of mine.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to ask, because a lot of pressure could be external going into that fight. People might be thinking, where's Luke's mindset? And did you feel as well, possibly in your mindset, that did you feel pressure on yourself about, right, I'm probably going to have a bit of a target on my back because I've got that kind of UFC link, and any guy who wants to compete against me will see me as, if I can beat him, then I can get to there. Did you feel that kind of thing, or were you trying to always suppress it and just push it to one side and focus on the fight?
I think I really just tried to continue the way I've always been, and continue, and fight the way I've always fought, and train the way I've always trained. And I never really changed my approach the whole time I've been training and fighting. Like, since day one, since my first amateur fight, I've always treated every single fight like the biggest fight of my life. And I've never really worried about the pressure. I really haven't. It's never really, but it transpires. I think that's one of the problems. I think it has affected me. I think I do feel the pressure, like every human being does. And I think the way I'm coping with it or handling it is it's ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. And I've just been ignoring the fact that it could be a big deal, or this could be happening, or that could be happening. But not intentionally. I think it's just the way I approach things. And it's like, it'll be all right. I'll do this, do this, do this. And going into this fight, I am definitely aware that there's a target on my back, being a middleweight coming out of the UFC with quite a big name, and there's people out there trying to get into the UFC, and they think they can beat me and then get there. And that's great. I want people to want to fight me. That's what it's all about. There's people I want to fight, and that's how the game works. So I'm happy about that, and I knew that going into Italy. I knew Mattia, the guy I fought, saw it as the biggest opportunity of his life to get into the UFC. He spent a lot of money. He went over to Canada and trained at TriStar. He changed a lot of things that he's never done before to try and beat me. That was his plan. And he invested a lot of time and money into it. And I knew that was going to happen, and I knew that every opponent I'm going to fight now, until I'm back in the UFC, are really going to rise to the challenge, because it's going to be the biggest fight they've ever had. Fighting me now for a middleweight who's on the European scene, it's definitely the biggest fight of their career, and they're going to feel all those things, all those pressures, all those differences. Whereas for me, it's the same old, same old. I think since my fight in Italy and winning that title, I think that it just builds more pressure. I think there's a bigger target on my back now. I think more people think they can beat me. I think more people will watch that fight and think, right, I'm going to go in there and do this, and I can beat him and get to the UFC.
Now, like you said, I heard your quote there, you say, till you're back in the UFC. Obviously, your target's to get back there. Now, I've spoke before previously with some fighters, and they've said that the UFC even said to them, look, go away, get a couple of wins, and then come back. And have they spoke to you in that manner, or was it one of the? How was the? I say the release, so to speak. Was it kind of amicable in the way that they spoke to you and said, look, X, Y, and Z?
Oh, completely. I was very fortunate. I have a great relationship with the UFC, and I have a great relationship with Joe Silva. So it wasn't. I've heard a lot of stories like yourself about how people get cut and how they get released and all the rest of it. And usually, some people just get an email. Some people get whatever. And I had a personal phone call from Joe. He gave me a ring, and we spoke about the situation. And I knew it was coming. I said to him that it was coming. And we spoke, and I said I completely agree. You can't lose 3 fights in the UFC. It just doesn't matter what the circumstances. If they're dodgy decisions, it doesn't matter. You can't do it because then everyone would want to do it, and that's how the game works. And he literally said to me, "We want you to fight for the UFC, Luke, but you can't because you lost some fights. So go away, win some fights, and we'll have you back when the opportunity is right." And I really feel now it's up to me when I want to go back, as long as I keep winning, obviously. But it's my decision now, and I know what it takes to be in the UFC. I know what it takes to be on the physical side of it, and the mental side, and the PR side, and everything to do with the game, not just turning up on fight night and having a fight, which is what a lot of people think the UFC is about. It's about a lot of other things, and I'm really now trying to sort out my life. I'm a young guy. I'm only 27 years old, and like I said, I've had my career in the UFC. I've had my stint in the UFC. My next stint in the UFC is going to be the last one. You don't leave, come back, leave. You get 2 chances really. And I feel like I got to the UFC after 5 professional fights. I hadn't even been a professional for 2 years. I don't even know what the sport was for close to 5 or 4. So it was very, very early on for me, and I feel like I want to make sure now the next time I go to the UFC, I'm 100% ready to go win a world title. That's what I want to do. That's what it's about for me. It's not about just, I was in the UFC and it was great. I want to completely cleanse my life, cleanse my training, make sure everything's prepared and I'm in the right place, in the right time, and go forward in the game and do something big that I feel like I can do. And that's what it's about. It's about timing. And I think for me, it was the wrong time the first time I went to the UFC, even though I had a great start and a couple of dodgy decisions and whatever you can say. You could really look at it. I had 6 fights in the UFC and I won 5. And that's 5-1 in the UFC is not a bad record. But it doesn't matter. I don't think the time was right for me. I've now come away from that. I've got married. I've moved country. My whole life has changed, and it's all changed for the better. So I just want to make sure that I'm prepared and ready to go back in there and do big things.
Yeah, I remember when your career kicked off. I was at Manchester card, and I went to the London card as well. Because I remember, because you got Dolce on with you as well. I was in I was in Manchester when I met you, and I remember it specifically because it was after the weigh-ins, and you was sat in the hotel lobby, so to speak, or it was like the bar area, I think it was, and you had like a trough of food, like sweet corn and all sorts in there. I remember going up to you, and me and my friend made a bit of a joke about not stealing a little buffet or something, and got a picture with you and stuff. I remember just meeting you, and I remember seeing that start, because I watched Ultimate Fighter series, and then, like I say, you were still early in your career when you started in the UFC, and it's almost like you kind of got your losses in kind of as a good stage in your career where it's not like you're trying to get for the title fight there. You've learnt a couple of lessons. You maybe learnt how to fight an awkward fighter in Strickland. He was very awkward in the fact that because he was running backwards and doing counter-striking, it was very awkward for you to try and get anything off, because you were always, no matter how long your reach is, he was always out of it because he was always going back so much. So you got to learn, you learnt fights that you might have learnt on the regional scene if you hadn't got to the UFC a bit earlier.
100%, yeah, 100%. I mean, like you said, I don't know what coach is giving someone advice that you're fighting a guy who's 6'6" and got a longer reach, stay away from him. You know, every time I've ever fought anybody, they usually want to close the distance and get a takedown.
Yeah.
And that's what I've fought my whole career. But now my career's not been very long, and I start fighting these different guys who've got different ideas and dying in and out and doing, you know, and all this, which is great. It's a great way to fight. It's a boring way to fight, but it's like a karate style of fighting. If you want to win a points decision. But he didn't even try and win a points decision. He just sort of moved around, and I think that was his idea, but he never conveyed it very well. But yeah, I definitely learned a big lesson there. And then when I fought Mattia in Italy, he did a very similar thing. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Except he caught me with a lot more shots than the other guy. And but I started throwing kicks, leg kicks, whatever, changing it up. And I did change the game up, went for a takedown, and that's why I won. Because I'd been there before. I knew that if I just carried on doing what I was doing, I could lose the decision. So I decided to completely change my game, get a takedown, and change the fight. You know, so maybe I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't fought Sean Strickland. And like you said, if I'd not been in the UFC so early, I would have had my Sean Strickland fights earlier on the regional scene against lesser opponents who would have tried similar things. And you know, I don't think there's a man on the regional scene that can beat me. So I think I would have done very, very well, and I would have been one of those guys that would had a huge record and then gone to the UFC.
And
but I was lucky enough to go to the Ultimate Fighter.
And is this why you're doing seems like you're doing like a one fight deal, so to speak, because you're doing BCMMA on the 20th of February against Rafael Silva, and you know, and then it looks like you're trying to just keep yourself active with like one or two fights here and there, not sticking to a long-term contract, so to speak. With like Barnatt might have a long-term deal and stuff. Is that because obviously you're leaving that door open for the UFC? And
no, I mean sort of, yes. I know what you're saying, but pretty much now, unless you sign with Bellator, every company give you something called a UFC out clause.
Right.
So you know, if you say I signed with Bama 6 fights, I'd be like, yeah, but there's a UFC out clause. If the UFC come knocking, I can leave. Some companies don't do that now, but most companies do because they know every fighter on the planet wants to go to the UFC, so they're not going to sign with you unless that's an option. For me, it's literally the fact is that I've seen fighters and I've been friends with fighters that have signed with big organisations that haven't had a fight for 6 months or 4 months or 3 months. And in my amateur career, not amateur, even professional, when I started, I fought every 6 weeks. You know, I was very, very active. Boom, fight, fight. And that's what the UFC took away from me. The UFC, I had 6 fights in 2.5 years, nearly 3 years. So I was used to the active lifestyle and always training and always fighting. And that's what I wanted to get back. I didn't want to have a 3-month gap in between each fight because there's no need for it. The only time you need it is when you're fighting the top guys in the world and you need the time to train and prepare and improve. If I'm trying to make differences, you know, the only minutes of training or fighting that matter are the ones that you do in a cage on fight night. I could practice for 100,000 minutes doing a certain kick or whatever. It doesn't matter until you do it on the day, on the night when you're supposed to do it. So I need the cage time. I need the time in there fighting good guys. And that's why I'm not even doing 1 fight deal. So I got a 2 fight deal with Bellator, and hopefully I will be announcing that next fight soon, defending my title. But it's going to be in Italy again, hopefully in Milan this time. So we'll be doing that in May by the looks of it, but they're still trying to secure the venue before they announce anything. And then I'm fighting for BCMMA, which is basically just a local fight for me. It's against a very, very tough guy. He's had over 50 professional fights, had a lot of career behind him, fought all over the world, fought for ONE FC, you know, a great European opponent. And that's on BCMMA, which is run by the matchmaker for that is my friend, Jack Mason. And it's literally, I wanted to fight in February, I want to keep active, I want to fight as much as I can. And I contacted everyone, I want to fight in February, I want to fight Banner or around other people I was trying to get a fight with. And Jude Samuels was like, yep, I'll get you a fight. And then he couldn't find me an opponent because, you know, they only want a certain caliber of opponent to fight or a certain type of opponent to fight me. It needs to be a big deal. And I'm not bothered in any of that. I just want to get a fight. I want to get the practice in. And when I said to Jack, he goes, I can get you an opponent tomorrow. He found me about 7, you know, different opponents that want the fight because everyone wants to fight me. But, you know, when they fight for Bama, they feel like they need to get paid this much money or this needs to happen or this needs to happen. So, you know, I'm happy I'm fighting for BCMMA. It's local. It's in Colchester. I'm from Chelmsford, Essex, so it's basically next to my hometown. All my friends and family can come. It'll be the first time I've fought in London against Matt Nielsen. And, it's a great thing for me. It's a great fight. It's in 6 weeks, and I can keep fit and keep in shape, just keep the ball moving.
Do you know what? Yeah, and you're fighting a guy who's Silva's very good with submission. He's a very good grappler as well. So, he's really probably going to test you on that ground game if it gets to the ground, which, your last fight, you won with a rear naked choke.
Yeah, he's an extremely good grappler. That's what he's known for. But he's also very game on the feet. He's good everywhere. He's very, very talented. He's just older and had a lot of fights. Yeah. So, he's not UFC material because he's never going to go there because I think he's 35 or 36 or something like that. And you don't join the UFC at that age. They're looking for young talent now to build. So he's good enough to fight in the UFC, no doubt about it. He's a tough guy. And like you said, he's a black belt on the ground, I assume. I don't know, but from looking at his fights, he looks that level. And he's a king grappler, and he gets stuck in. So, it's a dangerous fight for me. A lot of people have said to me, well, why bother? But a lot of people turn around to me and say, well, why are you doing this? Isn't the point? You're not getting paid. I'm getting paid nothing for the fight, really. I'm fighting a tough guy, could affect my record. And I'm like, listen, that's not how you need to think. If you want to be good, if you want to get somewhere, you don't think like, oh, this guy could do this. It's bullshit. I want to fight, and I want to keep fighting, and this is a guy who can challenge me and make me train hard and improve and then win and get a good win against a good person. I'm not looking to fight a load of bums and then get back to the UFC. It's just not in my DNA, and I definitely could have. I could have picked a different opponent. I could have fought a different guy. I could have fought on a different show where they'd give me a guy that I could easily beat. I'm not saying I'm not favourite in this fight because I still am. I reckon against Silva, I'm still probably the favourite to win. But he's a very skilled, very talented guy, and it's going to be a very, very entertaining and tough fight.
He is, and that's why I think it's a good matchup as well. When I looked into it, I saw it was a very good matchup. And like you said there, you don't want to be fighting bums. The good example there was from what you said was Gunnar Nelson when he went against Damian Maia, and I was saying if it goes to the ground. When I talked previously about it, I said if it stays on the feet, I think Gunnar Nelson could have this fight. He could actually win this fight. Because of his karate style and the in and out movement, I thought it'd be harder for Damian Maia to catch Gunnar. But if it goes to the ground, it's going to be a nightmare. And Gunnar was happy for it to go to the ground because he said it himself. He goes, I want to be tested against the best. I want to test myself as a competitor. And he went, and obviously he'd lost, but he didn't win because he did what he wanted to do. He wanted to go in there and see how good he could fare against them.
Yeah, I had exactly the same thing against Mark Munoz. Mark Munoz is the most terrible style for me you can imagine.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic wrestler with good ground and pound, and he's a great athlete. I mean, he was older when I fought him as well. But I asked for that fight. I asked Joe Silva, can I have that fight? Blah, blah, blah. And he was like, why do you want that fight? I was like, well, because of this, and this. And what you just said is I want to test myself against these people. I was in America for 2 years training my wrestling, and yes, I got taken down by Mark Munoz, but if you watch the fight, the grappling aspect of the fight, I actually did good in. I got up, I was doing very, very good transitions in the fight, and I didn't lose on that part. I actually lost on the striking. Him hitting me with the big shots and all the rest of it is why it led to me losing. So I got to test myself against one of the best wrestlers or grapplers that's ever been in the UFC in the middleweight division. And I got to fight the guy in the Philippines, and it was an amazing fight for me. I would never take it away, even though I lost. Losing is something, as a fan, looking at this sport, obviously no fighter wants to lose. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy losing, but it's part of the game. You have to accept it, and you have to learn from it, and you have to do it. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? Every time there's a fight, one of the guys loses. So, some people. The fans just look at winning. It's like football when you see your team, they're rubbish, they lost to whoever. It's part of the game. It's part of the transition. It's just unfortunate in MMA, it can have such a big deficit to your career every single time. You're expected to win. You're expected to do this. You're expected to not just expected to win now. You're expected to win by an unbelievable knockout or an unbelievable submission. That's what fans expect from you, which is a lot of pressure. It's very, very difficult to do, but. That's what we do this for. We do it for the challenge. So I'm not going in there to try and beat up some guy who hardly has trained MMA and is just there because I want to look like a good guy. And that's bullshit. I want to fight people that can fight, that are good, that know what they're doing, that can challenge me, and I can put myself up to the challenge and win.
Yeah, and you're right, because like you say, when the Munoz fight, even when I heard it announced, I went, is that real? You're picking like the shortest wrestler. He's like short, low center of gravity, and you've got legs that are as long as a giraffe. And I went, you're like a wrestler's dream. And I was like, well, you all trained with Phil Davis at Alliance. Maybe he's worked on his stance. I thought, okay, let's see what goes down. And you're right, because your transitions were working, but then again, obviously, you probably focused mentally on the wrestling side of things, that you probably were letting these strikes get through because you were so focused on don't get the takedown possibly in. But then again, if you look at another fighter, then let's go to another fight. Chris Weidman, he lost to Luke Rockhold because he did a kick which he should never have done. And you know what? We probably will never see him do that ever again in the cage.
Yeah, that's a lesson still learned. And the thing about Chris that people think, obviously he's a champ, but he's still young in his career. The guy's had about 13 fights or something, maybe a bit more than that now. My maths might be a bit wrong. But he's still a young guy in his career. He's wrestled his whole life and all the rest of it. It's a crazy game, and I think, like I said, fans, not a lot of fans took to Chris. They didn't really like Chris Weidman, a lot of fans, because apparently he wasn't giving fans what they want. He wasn't giving them the amazing knockouts and the amazing stuff, But he knocked out Mark Munoz with a great elbow, and he knocked out Anderson Silva, and he beats Vita. But people are like, they expect so much from you now, and Chris was a great champion, and I think he could beat Luke Rockhold if he stuck to what he's good at.
Yeah.
He didn't try and be this fighter that everyone else wants him to be, and he just wrestled him, took him down, and stayed on top of him, and done what he does. But that's the game, and that's the problem. Sometimes the mentality you go into the cage with on the night is what matters, not everything else. Yeah,
you're right. It is strange, the mentality of it. And obviously, your mindset, you've got your mindset on the UFC future goals. You're taking your bouts seriously. You're trying to get guys who are of a high level that are going to keep testing you. Because like you said, you don't want to take bums. Because if you fight a bum, then you go back to the UFC. You're not going to fight bums when you get in the UFC, so it's going to be a completely different level you're going up against again, and you don't want to have that delayed reaction because you've been used to guys that can't do what these guys in the UFC are doing. And, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the smart choice, which is what I look for. It's why I'm looking at your career closely. I've been following your move to Spain and everything, and I think it's awesome. And I'm sure as well that your missus is made up that the next one's going to be at Milan.
Yeah, well, we actually spent some time there after we were fighting Rimini. We actually went to Milan for a week, so we know it pretty well. So I'm pretty happy it's there, because I kind of feel like I know the area a bit more than I did when I went to Rimini. And trust me, my last two fights I've had, one was in Italy against an Italian, and the other one was in the Philippines against a Filipino, and I haven't been the fan favourite for a long time. So I'm looking forward to this next one, which is in pretty much my hometown, and I'm fighting a Portuguese guy. So hopefully the fans will be on my side. I'm sure there will be. I'm trying to pack the place out with my friends and family, and it's a great show, BC MMA. That's the other thing about it, is it's not hugely well known, don't get me wrong, and people are quite surprised that I'm fighting on what they call like a small show. It's not even an arena show, it's a small show in a sports hall in Essex, but it's a good opportunity for me. It's, like I said, it's for a friend of mine, Jack Mason, who's put together this show, and they stream it live on MMA TV, so you can watch it for free. There's no payment. They have thousands and thousands of people watch it, and it's just building and building and building. And you don't just have me on there. You have John Maguire, who's on there, who's a teammate of mine who fought in the UFC as well. Sean Carter, who's on there, who was on The Ultimate Fighter. He was at the tryouts for The Ultimate Fighter, and he's had a great career. And there's some really exciting bouts on the card, as well as myself. I'm not even going to be at the top of the card. I think I'm opening the event up as the first fight on the main card. I don't have the biggest name on there. It's still, the fights on there are fantastic. So I think if you appreciate MMA and you're a fan of MMA in England, if you're in England, you'll understand what BC MMA is, and you would have seen it. But otherwise, it's difficult for people to understand why I would choose the show. But I think it's going to be a great move for me.
No, you're right. BCMA is growing. That's you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was actually a little bit gutted. I was like, how did you know what I was going to say? But BCMA itself, they're very early, but the thing is, they're doing the right things because, like you say, Jack Mason, who's got the experience from like Cage Warriors, especially, you know, working with Graham, not working, sorry, but being part of that promotion with Graham Baldwin. He can take a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge from it, and I think it's a huge thing that, you know, that he's slowly building up this promotion, and he's got, like I say, it's a great card. Yeah, you've got yourself on. Don't know, you've also got some other good bouts with Luis Gonzalez. He's fighting 125 flyweight lad. He's fighting LeBlond, I think it was, off the top of my head. You know, cracking little Luis Gonzalez, cracking little flyweight potential future star. You got Steve Aimable?
Aimable, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Aimable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a title fighter he has against Stephen March.
And he's retained that title a few times already, and he's had some fantastic fights at that show.
Yeah, he has.
You know, they've been very super exciting fights. They haven't been boring. They've been everywhere. You know, they've been on the ground. They've been standing there. I've been there to most of the shows. I've been in the crowd watching. You know, and they've always had a great exciting fights. And they have a few amateurs on there as well at the beginning of the card that are growing. And like you said, it's a growing event. That's what it is. But it's growing in the right way and has great talent on it. And Jack is intelligent with the way he's doing. He's a very clever guy. He's been around the game a long time. He's had over 40 fights himself, all across the world. Like you said, for Cage Warriors, he fought for Barnatt with me in Italy, and he's been Cage Rage, everything. He's fought for everyone and knows everybody in the organisation. And he literally is the backbone of MMA, I feel like, in the South right now, because he's keeping it all together. He's brought BKK, the fight gym in Essex. He's created that himself, you know, with help from people as well, but he's the backbone to that. And he's created talent like Arnold Allen that's now fighting in the UFC. Like I already mentioned, Sean Carter, who's fighting on this card as well. And he's really creating something with Beast MMA that will take. It's got longevity because he doesn't overpay his athletes. He doesn't, you know, it's not too expensive to go to. He doesn't make you have to stream it and pay for it. It's free. You can watch it for free. He's having thousands of people watch it. He's putting all the videos up online straight after so you can see them, and he's building it bit by bit. You know, he knows it's a long project. He's been involved with it for a long time now, and he's just slowly getting there. And I think it will become one of the best shows in Europe in a few years because he's trying to build, like you said, talent from the ground up. He's not trying to go out there and get all the best guys he can. He's luckily enough got, you know, me and John as teammates that are very high-ranked guys in the country and in Europe that he's been able to put on the card. But without us, it's still a fantastic card.
It is indeed, because you know I've known I've known Jack Forsaden and other lads dealing with the cards before in the past, and it's nice to see the UK scene like that, you know, growing. When Cage Warriors left, there was that void, and it's nice to see like BCMMA, FCC up in Scotland. You got On Top Promotions. You've also got is it Warrior Fight Series, which is run by Harry Shoebridge. He set up his little shop down south as well. And Pain Pit in Wales. And also Clan Wars in Ireland. There's a cumulative of nice, solid promotions for guys to constantly be able to get fed into before they go up. You know, to keep getting tested, test their waters, see where level are at, and then obviously Cage Warriors coming back this year. Fingers crossed. Graham's going to give us a date when the show's going to start. I've heard rumours of when, but you know, it's quite promising for the UK scene still. And I suppose you've seen the difference because you were away for a while, and then when you came back, you've seen the level of it increase.
Oh yeah, I mean, although I've been away and you know, I definitely haven't been as invested as I was before once I was at the UFC. Cause I had a lot going on, but the difference I think is with people like the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation who are trying to, you know, make sure everything's done correctly, and Safe MMA who are making sure everything's done correctly with the shows. And now the good shows and the big shows are introducing that, making sure that you get blood tested, you have medicals, all the basic silly things that should have been done years and years and years ago, but it's taken a lot of time and effort from a big group of people to make it happen, you know. So you now know, coming back, starting when I was outside the UFC, when I had my first 5 professional fights, to now when I'm going to have my first professional fight in England outside the UFC, it's much more professional, it's much more well done, it's much more clear cut. You know which shows to go to if you want to progress your career. Whereas before, you kind of just fought. You know, I remember I fought for UWC, which was a great show and had a good little stint for itself in Southend. But there was no blood tests. There was none of that stuff then. Now it's come in still only a select amount of shows, you mentioned quite a few of them there, that are working with Safe MMA, that are working with the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation, that have the right judges, that have the right referees that are qualified, and all that sort of stuff. And as an athlete, you feel safe. You feel like you're going into an environment that is professional and that should be like that, and you're not worried about something stupid happening. So it's definitely a difference. I think that, for me, that's the main difference. And the thing that's improved, the professionals are always going to be professionals, but the things that's improved for me so much is the amateur scene in England and the world, since the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation have brought out this, almost World Cup of the World Championships that they have. They hold it in Vegas. They have the European Championships that they hold. That's made a huge difference to the scene, I feel like. I feel like it's not... It almost used to be embarrassing to be an amateur back when I started as an amateur, which wasn't that long ago. But now you can have real pride in being an amateur champion, because you go to the Europeans to be a European champion, or go to the Worlds and be a world champion in amateur mixed martial arts, which makes it a much more real sport now, and I think that's the main difference for me since I've been away, is I can really feel the difference in that. I can feel the difference that you can be an amateur mixed martial artist and hold a real title, a real thing that really matters, that people really know about, and you can travel the world and fight different countries and different people from different countries and represent England. And I think that's the difference. And then obviously the professionals are getting better off of that, because the amateurs are training harder, becoming better, and then they turn pro and they're better anyway. So, it is definitely improving.
It is, Luke, and you literally put the nail on the head with that amateur scene. It has literally went up to the past few years. It went to a level that I didn't expect it to reach so quickly. And it is because of obviously the Worldwide MMA Federation. We've had Ben Cartledge on talking before about judging and about the courses and how just different aspects of that. And we've also had Mark Goddard on talking about the referee courses and how they're all trying to just up the game. And with the amateur scene, I was same as you, Luke. When I started an amateur, I was kind of like, I'm doing amateur, but I didn't really, there wasn't really that kind of, no one took it seriously enough, so to speak. As soon as I kind of got like a title out there, I went, no, okay, I'm going straight to pro now. And I logically, if I look back at it, I should have stayed at amateur and maybe just stayed there for X amount more fights. But at the time, it was that mindset, and you didn't know what the future was going to be like anyway. So, and there was no such thing as the UK MMA Federation. There was nothing of that. So, I just went straight off to the pro ranks. But it's crazy the way it's developed, and now, like you say, it's taken so seriously, the amateur scene. It's really, really taken seriously, and I really enjoy watching some of the amateur bouts, seeing some of the talented guys that are potentially going to come up. I love having some of the guys on to speak to as well, to just to help them get used to the scene, that kind of the media spotlight being on them and stuff. And I'm looking forward to what's going to happen in the next few years on the UK scene alone, and what talent's going to come out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was part of the UK Mixed Martial Arts, the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation, when they did the first World Champions in Vegas. I coached the UK team, and we came away with a lot of good medals. John Maguire took over, and he's been coaching the UK team since, and he's been doing a great job. And I think we won a couple of golds since then. So, it's prestige. That's what it is. It's as an amateur, there's no prestige. You're sort of doing it because you like the sport and you want to do the sport. Mm-hmm. But there's no like a one this or one that. Or you could be an amateur world champion. It doesn't really mean anything, until you go into this new federation that have built something that gives you real prestige, where you could say to someone, well, I travelled to Las Vegas, I'll be a Frenchman, a guy from Finland, and an American, and I won a world title. That's a real tournament, not a local show puts something on and you win a belt. It means nothing, It's real now. It's a real sport, and it's a real thing you can earn prestige and you can really work towards. I speak to, like I said, my coach in the Ultimate Fighter, Chael. He runs or used to run an amateur show. I don't think he's still involved. And we used to talk about it all the time, that it was the way forward now. And the other thing about it is, if you want to go into working in shows, having your own show, you're not going to make any money doing it on a professional scene, because the UFC, they own it. There's nothing you can do that's different, because the UFC will just go, right, anyone who's any good in your show, I'm going to have them, because everyone wants to fight in the UFC, like we said earlier. But as an amateur promotion now, if you bring out a solely amateur promotion who's dedicated to improving the sport and making things different, the UFC aren't going to touch that, because they're not interested in amateurs. Yeah. You can really do that, and you can get athletes. There's people that fight amateur for free, which is how they should fight, for free. It's a competition as an amateur athlete, and you can put on a whole card for free amateur athletes trying to win something and do something and get prestige to get to the World Championship.
Yeah.
You know, and it's becoming more of a sport, just like Jiu-Jitsu, which has all these Europeans are coming up in Lisbon now and they have all these competitions. MMA is going more that way. It will never become Jiu-Jitsu, but it's going more in that direction, which gives it, you know, what it needs, which is, you know, for people to believe in the sport rather than think we're just a load of bloodthirsty animals looking to have a fight, you know. And I think, and that's where the sport can really grow in the next 10 years. It's not the professional scene, because that's just the UFC expanding to wherever they want to go and wherever they want to put the money into it. It's the amateur scene where we could all help out and really grow the sport.
Yeah, it is. It's all about the grassroots. I've helped some amateur guys as well, just advise them, and it is key. You know, I've happily made mistakes in what I've done, because I was the first at the gym I was training at to become pro, to do X, Y, and Z, and I said I was going to do them, and I said to everyone, I'm going to fuck up. I'm going to do everything wrong because I don't know what I'm doing, and when I do it wrong, I'm going to learn what's right, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to help you. I said I'm happy to be like that sacrificial lamb at the first, because I care about the sport that much, and I care about the lads that I was training with. I cared about them. So, and it's huge, because, like, say, 10 years time, it will really make the sport better itself. And like, you want to get coaching, so you're already looking to improve the sport yourself, mate. It's beautiful to hear what's happening, because there's guys like yourself, like John McGuire, Mark Goddard, Ben College, all the guys that they just want to make a difference. They want to improve it in some way or some shape or form, not for their own benefit, but for the sport's benefit.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, Ben Carter's name, you mentioned there, Mark Goddard. These guys are really, they're working. They're actually working. They're not they're not doing the sport, but they're working in the sport and around the sport to make it better. And there's, you know, one person I always speak to a lot, obviously used to own the gym at Tsunami, is Nigel Burgess, who's now part of the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation. He has a big role in that and does a lot of work for it. And we speak a lot about these things, you know. And he's really, him and a board. There's a board of people, but he's the name I think of. Mark Day is another one that I used to train with as well, and he's now involved. And there's people in the background that no one even knows about that are spending hours putting together things you don't even think about, like fighters insurance and all these graphs and things to show people the evolution that can happen with the sport, and trying to get it into the Olympics. August Vollen, who's part of the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation, you know, he's setting standards in Sweden and in Europe that are making a difference to the sport, and they're doing that because they want the sport to grow. And I think that's the big thing with a lot of pros in the game, which I don't blame them, but a lot of pros are in it to make money and to fight and win and for themselves, and that's great. But if you want the sport to get bigger, it's not just about turning up on fight night, putting on a good fight and leaving.
No.
You know, it's about putting in all the effort elsewhere. And trust me, I could put in a lot more effort that I don't. I'm not saying I do a lot, because I don't. But in my mind, I will one day. You know, I feel like Spain is very, very far behind. It reminds me of England 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could make that difference there. You know, if I want to get I want to start a Spanish federation, and I want to have safe MMA in Spain and all these sort of things. Eventually, when it gets round to being there, I'll do it. You know, and it's just a matter of time and the opportunities coming. You know, at the moment, I'm still concentrating on my own career and trying to make myself back to the UFC and do great things there. But I'm aware of all of this stuff, and I'm aware of the difference that it can make to people. And I think that's all it really needs. And like you said, Ben Cartledge is one of the best judges we've got now in the UFC and in the world. He does a lot of other events as well. And I've known Ben Cartledge a long time. Ben Cartledge actually judged my third amateur fight. And I remember speaking to him after that, and I remember reading a blog recently about him judging that fight, and that was the fight he judged that made him want to judge fights, if that makes any sense. But you know, I think there's a core group of people in the UK that are working with the Mixed Martial Arts Federation that are really making a difference. I think we're leading the way, especially in Europe, along with Sweden, with August, in making those differences. And people are coming to England now for the standards and coming to us to ask questions about how we need to do things and how things should be done and this and that. And we're the ones making a difference. And I think even the big thing that's different which no one understands, is the fact that in America, when you turn up and you fight, you have to be checked off by a commission. There's a commission present at every single fight.
Yeah.
And we don't have that in England.
No.
There's no such thing as a commission in England. So you don't go fight or a professional fight in England and see a commissioner. It doesn't exist. You don't have a license. You don't have any of these things. It just seems so obvious. But in America, they have it, and the UK are the ones that are trying to bring the commissions in and really make a difference to the future of the sport. And it's the federation that are doing it, and I don't think they get enough praise or about it, or enough help from the public and the people that care about MMA, because I think it's still quite quiet. But once it all happens and comes into place, in 5 years, people won't even know about. They'll just hear of the horror stories that used to happen before, because they won't realise that all this work has been put into making the differences and making the changes.
Yeah.
So I think it's all good. It's just a matter of time.
It is. You're right, because they just announced as well that Egypt have just been introduced as well to the federation. So that's. I saw that. Yeah, I think it's yesterday or today they announced that, and that was crazy. I was like, Egypt, bloody hell! It's just crazy to think stuff like countries.
Where are Egypt going to get their standards from to know how to make sure they're running their shows properly? Where are they going to go? America doesn't care about them.
No.
It's this federation. It's the federation that's making that difference and making the sport more widely available to the world, not just in England, but to the world. To, like you said, these countries that we've never had an Egyptian in the UFC, but there could be some talented kid out there that just hasn't been given the right opportunity because he's not fighting on the right, etc., etc., etc. So this is how it works. It's building up the amateur guys to get them to that pro level.
There could be some Sage Northcutt who's not had a carbohydrate in his whole life in Egypt ready to step in. You just don't know. I just saw.
It could be a heavyweight if he's not eating carbs.
I'd tell you, he would. I saw a picture on Twitter today. Sage announced he had another knock on his door at 6 a.m. to get another drug test done. That's his 6th one in 3 months. And again, he's just there topless, doing the test. He obviously went, do I need to have a t-shirt on? No, that's fine. I'll just flex the whole time. He just makes me sick looking at him, to be fair. I like my one ab, if I'm honest. I think my one ab is stronger than his 6 little ones.
Exactly, and I have abs for about half an hour weigh-ins, and that's about it. So I feel your pain, don't worry about it. I think the person that feels the pain when it comes to Sage Northcutt the most is our mate Arnold Allen.
Yes.
We call him Mini Sage Northcutt because he kind of looks like him, but like a smaller version.
A smaller version.
But he can do everything better than Arnold, so it's like his big brother.
Yeah.
And I remember Arnie told me a story about when Sage did that backflip after his fight or whatever.
Yeah.
And we all took the piss out of Arnie. He got really, really upset and tried to do the backflip, fell on his face. So I think he's got a bit of a problem, but yeah.
Don't worry, Luke. I rip the back out of Arnold as well. It's fine. We all do. He loves it. He loves getting a bit of stick. It's great. Love the kid a bit, though. Love him a bit. There is a lot happening in MMA, and honestly, that's why I can always talk about. That's why we get like Ben on, Cartledge on, and Mark Goddard on, because we don't like. We've got yourself on, Luke. We talk about your fight. We can mention about your fight coming up, but we also like to talk about stuff outside of the cage, which is huge, and that's why we get on our podcast. We try to get people from outside in to talk. We've had cut men on and all sorts because we want people to understand the sport from every angle there is possible, because the sport isn't just what's happening in the cage, and that the UFC didn't get to where it was because of just luck. They had like people like Mark Ratner, who doesn't get the acknowledgement from the average Joe because he won't know who he is. But I met him in London. As soon as I saw him, grabbed him and thanked him for his work that he did at the early stages, but people just don't have a clue about. He's a huge part of the scene, and I think they are. I think people who helped founded scenes like the Federation are a huge part of it, and that's why I like to get these people on to talk. And it just, even if 5 people listen to the interview, it's a little bit more than it was before, so it might spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about Mark Ratner, I remember after the Birmingham fight, him coming up and apologising to me about how appalled he was to the decision for my fight, and I'd never heard of that before, but he's the guy who knows.
Yeah.
He's the guy who really does know. And he came up to me and said, I'm sorry, Luke, I'm sorry for that happened, and it happened to you, but we're trying our best to sort it out. And it's just one of those things. I think it's great. I think the evolution for the sport at the moment, and people like we've been speaking about, making a difference, and I think they'll continue to make the difference, and hopefully one day the sport will be whole, if you want to call it that, and it'll be a real thing, because the UFC is a real thing, and trust me, it's a real thing, and professional MMA is a big deal, but there's still a lot of holes and a lot of gaps and a lot of things that people don't think about that need to be filled, and day by day we're trying to fill them, so hopefully we'll get there one day.
Exactly, we will one day, and you can be part of that one day, but for now, you also need to focus on getting your backside back in the UFC.
Yeah,
You know, so I can.
Not even that. I mean, the thing that people focus on is the UFC, and I'm not saying I don't want to be there because I do. But at the moment, my focus is on getting myself settled in Spain, building a gym out there that can really support me, and I get all the training that I can think, so I don't have to leave home and travel to America or travel here to get the training, and I have it all around me all year round, and I'm on a system. You know, I want to focus on that, and my focus is winning in 6 weeks. You know, I want to compete, and obviously I want to be in the UFC because of the press that you get, the money that you can make, and all those sort of things that make a difference to your life. But realistically, all I want to do is do what I love, and that's MMA, and that's wake up every single day and train. So as long as I'm fighting wherever I'm fighting, and it's allowing me to do that and wake up and live the life that I've been living for the past few years, where I can just wake up and train every single day, and that's my only focus, that's all I care about. And the UFC can come to me when I'm ready, you know. My ideal situation, which obviously is like my dream situation, is the UFC come to me and say, look, we want you to fight this guy, and I say, no, I don't want to fight yet. I want another 6 months of sorting my life out, and then I'll be ready to fight, because I don't want to go there too early again. I don't want to go there and have to adjust my life for the UFC.
Yeah.
I want the UFC to become a part of my life and me be able to control it, and that's the difference, I think, from my last experiences. I changed my whole life to be a part of the UFC, and at the time, it was all my life was about, so I jumped at the opportunity, and you know, it's a bit different now. So I want to be able to be settled, be ready, have the perfect training environment, have this, have that, and then when they come along and I'm ready for them, I'll say, right, let's do it, because I already know I'm that level. People already know I've already got, you know, in my opinion, I've got 5 victories in the UFC, so I'm already there. I just need to make sure that I don't have to change my life to get there. You know, I just want to be able to walk out my door in the morning, walk down to the gym, do my training, go home, and then fight in the UFC. And that's the plan. So right now, my focus is 100% on preparing myself for that, preparing myself for 6 weeks, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, 20th of February, that's the big thing. You know, that's the big thing at the moment. That's what's on your mind, is BCMA. And it's going to be...
Yeah, exactly. Just preparing myself for BCMA and making sure I'm ready. I've got 6 weeks, or just under 6 weeks now, and I'm flying out to Spain tomorrow to really get training. I'll be doing 5 weeks of solid training. I'm just coming off the back of a camp that I spent nearly 3 months getting ready for Italy. So, you know, I'm already in pretty good shape. I just got to carve myself a little bit more and make sure I'm ready for making the weight, which has always been a big problem for me. I mean, I'm standing here at about 213 pounds, and I've got to be 186 in less than 6 weeks. So it's, that's always the challenge.
It's all right. I'll eat some bread for you. I'll help
you
you.
eat some bread, and I'll go for a run. I think
Exactly. See, it's a yin and yang, you see. So I'm helping in a way. I'm eating the bread that you can't eat. That's what it is. I'm having a bacon butty that you can't have.
Tell me how it tastes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say, Luke. Yeah, I just want to, you know, your next fight. Do you know what? Do you know one thing that always sticks in my mind about you? Right, the one thing I'll always remember is when you had the fight. I'm pretty sure it's fencing, and you started celebrating before he was actually finished. You dropped him. You put your hands up. The crowd's about to cheer. He gets back up, and you have to drop him again. Or was it Andrew Craig?
That was Andrew Craig.
Andy Craig, sorry, in Manchester.
It was twice.
Oh.
This is the thing. I've got a drill that I actually used to do with Nigel, the guy we mentioned earlier, where if I drop someone, I raise my hand, one of my hands, my right hand, because when they fall on the ground, I'm creating momentum to throw a punch onto the ground. So I'm 6'6", so my hand above my head is, I don't know, 7'6", I don't know, 7'7". And then if I throw that down, it's a lot of power in that strike. So the idea is that if I hit someone and drop them, my hand goes straight up, so then I can throw it down with violent force, and I can finish the fight. That's the idea. So in the fight, I drop him, I put my hands up, and I celebrate it. But I wasn't celebrating, I was trying to hit him again, I was just trying to prepare myself for the next strike. But then he stands up, and I drop him again, and then I did celebrate, so I thought he was absolutely out, and I start walking off with both hands in the air, and he starts nicking at my ankles and grabbing me. I had to take him down and submit him to win the fight, which was pretty embarrassing.
Oh yeah, honestly, I didn't know that, and I tell you what, everyone else were like, why is he celebrating? Punch him in the face! Oh, I tell you, we're all like having a mini heart attack in the crowd because everyone's going nuts. Honestly, we all went nuts for it, but it was. I tell you what, me and my friend Mike were just, me and Mike were sat there next to each other just watching it. It's just crazy that moment.
And the other thing is,
yeah.
Arnold Allen, the kid we talk about again, his professional debut, he fought a guy called Nathan Grayson at Cage Rage, and he did that. He hit someone, dropped him, put his hands up and walked off, and the guy was unconscious. And he looked like such a boss, just like hit the guy and just walked off, like already celebrating. Sort of like Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
So I was kind of trying to do that, and trying to get Arnold back. So it's Arnold's fault, because I was, trying to imitate him, but it didn't quite work out like that.
You can blame Arnold. That's a good one. Luke,
yeah, little bastard.
yeah, exactly. Luke, we'll let you get going, mate, because you're flying back. Like you say, you're flying away tomorrow. Get yourself ready and get yourself packed, buddy. Before you shoot off, though, what's your social media, mate, so people can jump on, give you a follow, and enjoy this little 6-week camp you got coming up?
My social media everywhere is Luke Barnatt, Barnatt. So on Instagram, Twitter, I'm kind of on Facebook but never use it. And yeah, just if you want to follow anything, just hit me up on there.
I can vouch for the Facebook bit, ladies and gentlemen. What about your sponsors, mate?
Oh yeah, I got loads of sponsors, but the guys that really helped me out are Bad Boy. They've been helping me out for years, and they're a real big part of my career. And I'm also now working with Scramble, so check them out. They've got some of the coolest gis you can think of. I've just got some brand new Godfather gis that have got like Marlon Brando on the inside.
Oh,
crazy
nice
stuff. So that's part of my new jiu-jitsu craze. I'm trying to go through and trying to win some. I was supposed to be going to the Europeans and doing jiu-jitsu, but unfortunately, with this fight coming up and my travel arrangements and not being in training, I decided not to do it. But yeah, so if anything for jiu-jitsu, I'm with Scramble, and anything MMA, I'm still working with Bad Boy. So there's plenty of other companies out there.
And you can vote, people, for Bad Boy MMA or for the MMA awards for the best equipment or apparel company, I think it is. So if you want
say that again, sorry.
People can vote for Bad Boy equipment, can't they, on the Fighters Only?
Yeah, they're up for the Fighters Only awards.
Yeah.
So for the best equipment and gear, so you can vote for Bad Boy there, which I've already voted for and tweeted and Instagrammed about that as well. And there's loads of other votes to have, like best fight of the year, best cage girl of the year, or ring girl, or octagon girl, whatever they call it. There's loads of different votes, so get on there and put in your votes as well.
I wouldn't know their names, Luke. I don't think anyone looks at the girls' names.
I only know Carly because it's from working with her on the local scene, but that's the only one I know. So
yeah.
The other girls are whatever.
I know them from the neck down. That's about it. No, only kidding, folks. I was just say, yeah, as well, Luke. Do you want to give a shout out to Jack Mason, you guys you train with, people? Do you want to give also for people? Mention your gym, where it is, stuff like that. Just get all that out as well, mate.
Well, there's too many people to mention who have helped me out over the years, so it's a long list. But like you said about Jack not only is a great training partner of mine, but like I said, I'm fighting for his show now, and he was the guy that introduced me to MMA. Without him, I would never have done a single thing. I wouldn't have stepped foot into a mixed martial arts gym, because Jack actually gave me a lift to Tsunami the first time I ever trained, which was about 8-9 years ago, and we trained together ever since, and are great friends because of it. So he's the only guy I can really mention. I think he's doing great things for MMA in the whole of England, and this show and everything he's doing is great. So big thanks to him, and thanks for getting me this fight that I got in 6 weeks. And if you guys want tickets to the fight, get on my Instagram and find out where it is. I Instagrammed about where you can get tickets from the other day, so go look on my Instagram and you can contact me and get tickets off me and come watch the fight. So do that, support Jack's show. If you can't do that, watch it on MMA TV. Beats MMA on MMA TV. I think it's the 20th of February. And the show's, my fight's at 9 p.m. The main card starts at 9 p.m. So that's the time you need to remember and log on and watch it. It's free, 100% free. So get on there and watch the fights.
Yeah, it's a great thing that MMA TV are doing to really push out the MMA scene outside of the UFC to people to watch, to kind of watch regional shows. It's a great thing that they're doing, so I keep pushing their stuff whenever they got shows on to watch, so do tune in, folks. Luke, thank you, sir, for coming on. Have a great trip back to Spain, have a fantastic camp, and have a great time at BCMA when it comes up.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks very much for having me on, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.